Welcome to Back to the Text Themselves, a series on phenomenology. Today's video examines section 69 to 71 of Heidegger's Being and Time. In this video, we'll consider our relationship to the world and how that relationship is grounded in temporality. Specifically, we'll examine the temporality of taking care of things both at hand and present, the notion of horizon as grounding the relation that makes up our world, how spatiality is grounded in temporality, and the temporality of our dealings within the everyday world. If letting things be relevant constitutes the existential structure of taking care, and if the latter, as being together with, belongs to the essential constitution of care, and if care in turn is grounded in temporality, then the existential condition of the possibility of letting something be relevant must be sought in the mode of the temporalizing of temporality. What links does Heidegger make to establish a relationship between temporality and world? First, as previously shown, the ecstatic unity of temporality is the ground of care, which as a unified phenomenon consists of our being ahead of ourselves and already being in a world, and in being together with interworldly beings. Second, when it comes to our being in the world with interworldly beings at hand, care manifests in the mode of taking care, whereby we circumspectly deal with things discovered within a surrounding world. Third, taking care of things at hand requires that we have some grasp of their use, which can only take place within a larger context of relevance. Fourth, understanding makes accessible that context of relevance whereby we're enabled to let things become relevant. And so we can see how temporality is the primordial condition by which we can relate to the world, both the surrounding world whereby interworldly beings are discovered, through the worldliness of the world that is the context of relevance, and all of which is possible because my being in the world is care, which itself is grounded in temporality. With this established, we can now inquire into the modes of temporality uniquely belonging to the world in its various senses, beginning with this letting interworldly beings be relevant. As discussed in the previous video, understanding, which allows access to this context of relevance, has its own temporal structure that includes awaiting for the context of relevance to appear and retaining this relevance in a manner that lets useful things make themselves be present to us. It can also entail a forgetting, since understanding things in their relevance often involves becoming absorbed in the heedful dealings with those things where we, in a sense, lose ourselves. The painter can perhaps most effectively use the tools at their disposal when they forget themselves and instead are immersed in the activity of painting. As such, the primary mode of temporality at work in taking care is the present, whereby we make present the possibilities of equipment through understanding. Does this mode of temporality remain when it comes to the theoretical mode of relating to things, as in the case of science? It's to this question we'll next turn. If the thematization of what is present, the scientific projection of nature, is to become possible, Dasein must transcend the beings thematized. Transcendence does not consist in objectification. Rather, objectification presupposes transcendence. Part B of section 69 aims to establish the existential concept of science and to consider how the theoretical mode of relating to things remains grounded in temporality, if only in a modified sense. Doing so requires undoing any hard and fast boundaries between praxis and theory. Praxis concerns the involvement with equipment ready to hand, whereas theory concerns one's approaching that equipment as objects that are present and available for physical and metaphysical consideration. When one engages in theoretical research, by which Heidegger includes science, the practical doesn't simply disappear, however. Indeed, such research still requires its own tools, microscopes, measuring devices, etc. Yet it's also the case that this theoretical mode of inquiry has been granted priority and an elevated status relative to the practical mode. Heidegger links this prioritization with the notion of intuition and vision that we see going all the way back to Plato. Intuition and vision here referring to a kind of beholding in the mind the essence of a thing abstracted from its changing, impermanent characteristics. But the priority should be reversed. The theoretical mode always presupposes a factical taking care of things within the context of the totality of relevance. Circumspect deliberation entails the bringing near of what is taken care of and interpreting it. It's a making present that also always entails the complete ecstatic unity of temporality in retaining the context of useful things taken care of while also awaiting its possibilities to unfold. How does this circumspect deliberation relate to the theoretical mode then? Heidegger provides an example of the heavy hammer. Through circumspect deliberation, we initially relate to the hammer in its possibility for hammering. Yet, upon lifting it, we discover a notable impediment to its practical deployment. The hammer is too heavy to be useful. This leads circumspect deliberation to switch from the practical to the theoretical mode in which we inspect the hammer as an object. This doesn't mean that the hammer is altogether extracted from the world of relevance it properly belongs to, only that its use, disclosed by that context, is temporarily suspended. When the theoretical mode thematizes the hammer's objective character, we go beyond simply examining this broken hammer to contemplating its abstract properties. We theorize about hammers. Similarly, a painter may transition from using tools for painting to addressing their tools when they no longer work. Brush breaks, the paint runs out, to contemplating the nature of painting itself as a matter of theoretical inquiry. In this latter situation, the spatiality of the hammer or the brush becomes indifferent. Now recall that spatiality is part of our understanding of the totality of relevance of a thing as we draw near in using it. But in the theoretical mode, any location will do. Any world point or coordinate will suffice when it comes to the objectively essential elements of a hammer in general. This specific hammer doesn't matter except as a support for the thematizable thing that it has been turned into, an object defined a priori in terms of matter, motion, force, location, and time. That is, its physics. Yet such thematization is only possible because Dasein transcends these thematized beings. Transcendence entails the grasping of something by looking beyond it, such as when we're using tools by aiming at their possible purposes rather than their actual state as found in the here and now. Similarly, we can only thematize objects because we encounter them through transcending them. Objectification presupposes transcendence. And transcendence belongs to Dasein in always already being in the world with things ready to hand. In fact, this is the meaning of Heidegger's phrase, the transcendence of the world. It's not the world that is being transcended, but rather it is the world as Dasein that transcends itself by going beyond the actual and toward the possible. And if Dasein is grounded in temporality, then temporality makes possible this transcendence because for there to be somewhere to go, temporality must allow for an ecstatic dimension to it. And this movement opened by ecstatic temporality is only possible because temporality is also characterized by what Heidegger calls horizons, a concept that we will next address. The existential and temporal condition of the possibility of the world lies in the fact that temporality, as an ecstatic unity, has something like a horizon. Heidegger reminds us that the world is the unity of relations that forms the structure of meaningfulness of that world, the worldhood or worldliness of the world. Those relations consist of the in order to, in the face of which, and the for the sake of which. Understanding these relations allows for a consideration of the totality of relevance belonging to interworldly beings we take care of. This meaningful world is Dasein itself, and this world only exists because Dasein exists. In existing, I'm thrown and delivered over to interworldly beings that I need to take care of. Furthermore, Dasein is care, and care is temporality, and temporality discloses the there of our being there in a world. And so the world itself is grounded in temporality. Fair enough, but in what sense is the world temporal? Herein, Heidegger presents the notion of horizon and how there are three horizons corresponding to the threefold ecstasies of temporality. Time was first described as ecstatic, meaning that as beings in time, we are constantly reaching out from one mode of temporality to another. The future reaches back to the past, as the past comes forth to our present, and as our present is directed both toward our past and future. The horizontal dimension of time entails that range of possibilities within which we move and live through each temporal ecstasy. So we might say ecstasy connotes a kind of movement, while horizon connotes a space, a range in which one can move. And so Heidegger conceives of time now as an ecstatic horizontal temporality. Just as each mode of time, past, present, future, has its own ecstatic mode, so does it have its own horizon. And each horizon is understood in light of the unity of relations that composes the worldliness of the world. The horizon of the future entails Dasein's coming back to itself in the for the sake of which directs us toward our taking care of things in light of my existence, which includes its complete potentiality of being. The horizon of the past, as the having been, is characterized as the in the face of whereby we confront the world in our thrownness and attuned moods, which guides the manner by which we approach and take care of things. Finally, the horizon of the present is characterized by the in order to, whereby we take care of and accomplish something in making it present. We can see then how the horizontal dimension of temporality gives rise to those relations that make up our world, which again is not about a physical planet, but consists of the totality of interworldly beings within a context of relevance. So the world is grounded in temporality and is always presupposed in being together with things, whether ready to hand or present at hand. All of these are modes of Dasein's being in that world. Only on the basis of ecstatic and horizontal temporality is it possible for Dasein to break into space. Section 70 investigates whether spatiality can also be grounded in temporality, or if, instead, it's on equal footing with it. This question emerges out of a philosophical background whereby both temporality and spatiality have been granted preeminent status in epistemology, since it is the case that Dasein is care, and the meaning of being of care is temporality. It stands to conclude that the spatiality of Dasein must also be grounded in temporality. As mentioned previously, this spatiality is not equated with the notion of space as objectively present or in how extended bodies occupy space. Instead, Dasein takes space inside of itself. It makes room through directionality and de-distancing. When it uses something, it discovers a region, a belonging somewhere that is part of the totality of relevance. This making room through de-distancing and directionality is grounded in a making present. Making room is not about a position in space, but a leeway regarding the range of total useful things that may be nearby and taken care of. Directionality and de-distancing open us to this leeway, but it's only through Dasein's ecstatic and horizontal temporality that it's even possible to discover the spatiality of this world in the first place. The monotony, the habit, the like yesterday, so today and tomorrow, and the for the most part cannot be grasped without recourse to the temporal stretching along of Dasein. In section 71, Heidegger argues that our everyday world is also grounded in temporality. What is most remarkable in this section is not the main argument, which is well established if we consider the overall trajectory of the previous sections. Instead, what is notable is how Heidegger provides one of the more compelling descriptions of everydayness since his initial introduction of the concept. Heidegger reminds us that everydayness is the inconspicuous average mode of existing that one holds themselves initially and for the most part. This initially and for the most part is a key idea. Initially refers to the way Dasein first manifests in its being with others. The for the most part refers to the fact that Dasein generally appears in this mode, but not always. With everydayness, there is comfort with what is customary, whereby variety is defined as whatever the day happens to bring. This way of being is familiar to us in the attunement of a pallid lack of mood. Heidegger writes, the tomorrow that every day taking care waits for is the eternal yesterday. Though the everyday can be provisionally suspended by the moment, it is never entirely overcome. And yet, Heidegger concludes that everydayness can still be understood in its own unique mode of temporality, now as the monotony and habit expressed by the like yesterday, so today, and tomorrow. Or as we might sometimes say, it is what it is. An indifference and boredom that is the basis for complacency with the status quo in our lives, our communities, and our societies. If you find this video helpful and it's within your means, please consider making a super thank you tip. You can find the super thank you button below. If you wish to be an ongoing supporter of this channel, you can do so on Patreon, where I offer video transcripts and unedited materials. The link is in the video description below. I want to thank the following for already supporting this channel on Patreon. You can also support this channel by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to my channel. So as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, be well.